Good afternoon. Welcome to everyone that's dialed in. Hopefully you can hear me. So this is Gary Pryor here, and welcome to this afternoon's Rackspace Academy webinar on running MongoDB in the hybrid cloud with ObjectRocket. So just a couple of housekeeping bits and pieces to start off with. So as I've been saying on the chat window just beforehand, in terms of the audio, we do recommend dialing in using the phone if at all possible. We've had some audio issues in the past for people who have dialed in using their browser or voice over IP. So that's just a suggestion. Hopefully those of you on VoIP can hear. But if you're having any problems, please dial in over the phone. So second point, this webinar is being recorded, so it will be available on our YouTube channel shortly afterwards. So if you wish to go and take a look and watch it back again, then find our YouTube channel afterwards. Thirdly, you'll be on mute during the course of this webinar, but if you wish to ask any questions, please do so at any time using the chat window, which you should see on the left-hand side of your browser. So at this point, I'd like to introduce my co-presenter for today, Kenny Gorman. Kenny, are you there? Hang on, let me just check you're not on mute down here, Kenny.
Can you hear me? I'm here.
Yeah, Kenny, hi. So I just had to unmute you there. Slight technical issue. Kenny, say hi and introduce yourself.
Hi, guys. My name is Kenny Gorman. I'm one of the co-founders of ObjectRocket.
Cool, thanks, Kenny. So Kenny's going to be taking us through the bulk of the presentation this afternoon. So we're going to talk a little bit about what ObjectRocket is, what MongoDB is to start with, and then what the ObjectRocket service from Rackspace is. So ObjectRocket, a company that was acquired by Rackspace within the last year or so, and now being rolled out globally in Rackspace data centers. So we'll talk a bit about what the service is, how you can use it as part of a wider cloud-based solution. Kenny's got a couple of demos that he's going to take us through, so hopefully give you some ideas about how you can start to integrate ObjectRocket into your own applications and services. As I said before, please feel free to ask any questions using the chat window. We'll try and address those as we go through, and we will also have a Q&A section at the end. So Kenny, I think without further ado, I will hand over to you.
Great. Thanks, Gary. I appreciate the intro. Like we said, my name is Kenny Gorman. I'm one of the 3 original founders of ObjectRocket. As Gary mentioned, we were acquired last year, almost a year ago, by Rackspace. And since then, we've experienced some phenomenal growth and expanded our data centers across the U.S. and now into Europe with our new London data center. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the background of ObjectRocket, just to give you kind of a feeling for the history and why we made some decisions and why we designed things a certain way. I'm going to talk a little bit about MongoDB, give you some background on MongoDB itself, some of the design considerations behind Mongo, how to use Mongo at a very, very simple level, why Mongo is important and interesting. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how ObjectRocket takes Mongo to the next level in the cloud, and talk a little bit about some of the interesting features and capabilities that you can gain by using ObjectRocket in the cloud on the Rackspace platform. So talk a little bit about that. I've got a short demo for you. The demo is just going to show you how to kind of get in and get started with ObjectRocket, how to get an instance provisioned, how to get connected, and then have basically a Mongo project at your disposal to start creating databases or work with whatever applications you're building or what have you. So, all right, so let's talk a little bit about background. My background, almost 20 years now, is mostly in databases. I'm a data geek. That's basically what I've done almost my entire professional career. And the 2 other founders of ObjectRocket are in very similar states. They have done systems engineering and storage engineering. They've done security engineering. We've started businesses and grown teams. And sometime around 2011, we decided to create ObjectRocket. Excuse me. So let me talk to you a little bit about my background with Mongo, give you a little history on kind of where Mongo started out and kind of where it is now, and then I'll talk a little bit more about ObjectRocket itself. So MongoDB was invented or came on the scene around 2007. Dwight Merriman and Elliot Horowitz are the two founders of Tengen, the company then called Tengen and now called MongoDB Inc. And really the idea behind MongoDB was to create a database that exhibited similar traits to something like MySQL, a normal relational database that we all know and love, but had some improvements, had some changes, had some things that they needed to build their projects out that they were missing and that was lacking in MySQL or Oracle or other databases at the time. So what they came up with was MongoDB. MongoDB is a document-based database, and it has very similar traits to other databases like MySQL, things like secondary indexes. About 2009, I started working with Mongo in some of my projects. I was at Shutterfly, a photo sharing site at the time, and we needed a database that had interesting characteristics around XML payloads, around serialization, around JSON structures, and we really wanted to see what databases out there, what breed of NoSQL databases could be applicable to these types of projects. So we went on a search to find a database that worked with these new data types, these rich content types, video, photos, XML, things like this, and we came upon MongoDB. You can search for Shutterfly and my name, Kenny Gorman, on the web, and there's a bunch of presentations about that whole experience. So I won't go into a ton of detail there, except to say that MongoDB helped us gain quite a bit of value. It helped our performance of our applications, and it helped our scalability greatly. It was a couple-year project, and it took quite a bit of time. But really there I learned a lot about MongoDB, and that was back when MongoDB's version, I think, 1.2, and now we're on 2.4. So quite a bit of time. It was early on. Really, myself worked with Dwight and Elliot quite a bit on helping to form the product and what things and features were needed. I wrote the original MongoStat utility in Python. Now that's part of the distribution in C. So really, really early on, we helped to try and bring enterprise quality to MongoDB. All right, so let's talk a little bit about ObjectRocket. Early on, ObjectRocket, I'll talk about our background in a little bit more detail in a minute, but really the values around our team are about quality, about enterprise strength, enterprise grade Mongo solution. I'll talk a little bit about what that means. It's kind of a buzzword, but I'll talk a little bit about what that means to customers. And really fanatical support. In fact, that was one of the things that really drew us to Rackspace early on, as Rackspace is known for fanatical support. We felt very passionate that folks using MongoDB needed fantastic support. We were eager to help them with their MongoDB projects, and it was a natural fit. I spoke a little bit about the team of founders. Since then, we've grown to over 25 people. We have folks who are DBAs and support and account managers and systems engineers and a variety of great folks on the team now, and I'm very, very proud of those folks. As we've grown into London's data centers, it's been challenging, but we've had a great team to build this out. And then Rackspace. Rackspace fit has been fantastic. Rackspace has been a great partner. Under Rackspace's guidance, we've grown massively in the U.S. and massively now overseas. Hong Kong is coming next. London just was deployed. So we're super excited about working with Rackspace data centers and helping to really bring Mongo to Rackspace in a serious way. All right. So let's talk MongoDB. Let's get specific. So like I said, MongoDB is a document-based database. What that means is it doesn't mean it's a Word doc or some other type of text doc or PDF or something. It means that it's a document-oriented database based on JavaScript object notation. Okay, so JSON. JSON is a similar structure to how the database stores the data itself. in a format called BSON or binary JSON. The only difference between those two formats is there's a few other data types in BSON that aren't in JSON, like date, and then like specific ones that are around MongoDB, like an object ID type. So there's a little bit of differences between JSON and BSON, which is MongoDB's native format, but not much. Couple just interesting things about document databases, and that is that MongoDB itself supports very cool and native data structures that folks really like to use in their applications. I know when I was building my first applications, I was very excited about the ease in which you could build MongoDB applications using things like nested arrays. If, say, take Python, for instance, you can excuse me, easily serialize things like dictionaries to disk, easily take arrays and pop them into dictionaries as nested elements and then save those to disk. So there's great ways in which you can interact with your application and build applications in MongoDB. It makes it very easy. All right, so MongoDB has been very popular. They say it's been built for the age of the cloud. I don't know so much about that, but I do know that it's popular because it's very easy to use. I just talked about it a little bit. It's very easy to make applications. You don't have to worry about document mappers or object relational mappers or any sort of complication. You can just write applications, use native data structures, and save those out to MongoDB. MongoDB is by and far more popular than a lot of the other NoSQL, or it's one of the leaders in the NoSQL space right now. It is downloaded 5 million times according to MongoDB Inc. And if you look on Indeed.com, you can see that the number of job postings for Mongo jobs has just gone crazy. So it has a lot of adoption, and with adoption comes controversy. And with controversy comes, sort of the maturing of the product and those types of things. I'm going to talk a little bit about some maturity points and some growth points here in a little bit. So one of the hard parts about MongoDB is scaling it out, and that's really what ObjectRocket is about. Is really not the first day you build your application. That's super easy for building MongoDB apps. You can do that on your laptop. But when you go production or you start to deploy your application and want to start to get traction, then it becomes more difficult. How do you have availability? How do you have scalability? How do these core tenets of any operations team or DevOps team get applied to MongoDB? And so I'll talk a little bit about how ObjectRocket tackles that. And MongoDB is really designed to be a scale-out architecture. I'm going to talk a little bit about sharding here in a second, and sharding is the MongoDB design for how to horizontally scale an application. It is a native construct in MongoDB. It is something that MongoDB does by default. ObjectRocket takes that and with the power of the cloud and with using the cloud can add some great capabilities. I'm going to talk a little bit detail about those things here in a second. Let's see, a couple more things about MongoDB. The types of applications and customers are changing in recent times. I just want to kind of talk about what kind of applications are suited for MongoDB and document databases. So we see as ObjectRocket, we have a bunch of customers and a wide variance of the type of customers. And so we'll see things like sensor data or the Internet of Things, a lot of that type of data, a lot of gaming and mobile applications. That's a huge thing. We're starting to see more healthcare type applications and more traditional applications, ones that might be traditionally suited for relational databases. Folks are starting to use MongoDB and document databases for some of these unique use cases. And so that's really an interesting point, I think, and that is that MongoDB is not the only tool that should be thought about when you're creating your projects. MongoDB is one of many tools that we now, as database designers and application designers, have available. So what that means to us as engineers is that we don't have to just pick Mongo or just pick MySQL or Oracle. We can use all these things in conjunction, and it's really about choosing the best tool for the job. And that's kind of what I want to, a key takeaway I want you all to think about it, and that is, does MongoDB work for my application? Is the document model the right thing for this workload? There are some great tips out on the web on our site, ObjectRocket.com, and others about how to do that and how to choose those tools wisely. But suffice to say, for this prezo, it's something that should be considered. All right. So what is ObjectRocket? So ObjectRocket is a database as a service. I think what makes it quite a bit different than other services out there is it was built specifically for MongoDB. So what does that mean? That means that we didn't go out and provision commodity storage or cloud storage to back MongoDB instances. We actually designed from day one a hardware and software stack specifically for MongoDB. So literally, our racks are filled with computers purpose-built for Mongo. We use Fusion I/O cards, so it's all SSD. We employ a bunch of file system tuning and I/O tuning. So the I/O subsystem of ObjectRocket servers is first rate, very, very fast. We have a special build of MongoDB, frankly. We have a couple of small patches in MongoDB to make it well suited for a cloud environment. What that means is that we maintain 100% compatibility, but also have the ability to provide a fantastic 24/7 service in the cloud. ObjectRocket is quite secure by default. I think it's when you provision an instance, and I'll show this in a little bit, you're closed off by default. There's no ACL. But you have to open an ACL to allow access into your instance, and I think that's a little bit more unique than some of the other services out there. We try and be highly available, so when you provision an instance on ObjectRocket, we deploy what's called a replica set, a 3-member replica set. That is automatically done for you. You don't have to think about it. That those machines land on different racks. They're fully redundant. So really with just a click, you get a fully available, fully redundant system very quickly. And we're also very scalable. So I mentioned the topic of sharding before, or horizontal scalability. ObjectRocket is natively sharded. When you click on Create Instance, you get a single shard. You get all the bits that are required to make horizontally scalability a reality in terms of the MongoDB config servers, the data routers, and all the other components that are required to horizontally scale Mongo. All you need to do is connect to an IP and a port, and you're ready to go. And adding more shards is simply as easy as clicking a button. So I'll show a little bit of that here in the demo in a few minutes. Let's see, I mentioned customers. So using ObjectRocket. So what does ObjectRocket look like to the customer? And when you use ObjectRocket, what does it kind of feel and look like? So we have a cloud control panel. I'll show you a little bit about that. When you create an instance, you simply, like I said, get an IP and a port. And that's just your Mongo in the cloud. You don't need to worry about much more than that. You don't need to think about how do I configure it, what are my config files, what are the various components of the file system or the disk underlying the system. You just don't need to worry about those things. All you need to worry about is just interacting with Mongo like you would on your laptop, except it's on ObjectRocket. It's very fast and highly available. Let's see. The other thing is support. So ObjectRocket, like I said, has the sort of the core value of fanatical support. We have a team of DBAs on staff that are experts at MongoDB. I'd like to say that a good share of our support questions tend to be things that are just questions about Mongo, and we encourage that. If folks don't know how to model something in MongoDB or how to index something, they go ahead and they contact our support, and we work through it with them. So we don't just leave folks hanging. We believe that support from the very early design of your application all the way through its production deployment and running is very important, and we aim to be a partner through all those things. One last bit I'd like to mention, and that is ObjectRocket by design is in multiple data centers across the world. Those data centers, in some cases, are designed to have Amazon Direct Connect. What that means is folks using AWS applications can choose to use our service with no billing and or latency penalty. What that means is if you're 2 milliseconds from your database in an Amazon service, you're 2 milliseconds from our database on ObjectRocket and on Rackspace. And the same goes for ServiceNet. If you're a Rackspace customer already and you want to use the ObjectRocket service, you don't pay a latency or billing penalty by just going ahead and switching to our database. So we've done some networking changes, some networking work in the background to make sure that the customer gets really, really fast access to their data from wherever they have their applications. All right, here we go. So I'm just going to do a quick demo. Bear with me while I switch over to my screen here. All right. So Gary, pipe in if you guys can't see this, but I think I'm doing this right here.
Yeah, no, it all looks good to me, Kenny. Just a quick reminder while Kenny's getting set up. If you do have any questions, folks, just drop us a note through the chat window, and we'll address those just as soon as we can.
All right, so here I am at login. I'm just going to go ahead and log in as me. And what you see here is our basic control panel. And this isn't really anything interesting right now. This is just sort of our control panel. It shows a couple of graphs, shows the performance of your instance. But really what I want to show you is creating a new instance. So I'm going to go ahead to our instances pane here. And I'm going to go ahead and select a new instance. I'm going to name it. Let's go ahead and do it in the London data center. And I'm going to choose a 5 gigabyte plan. So let's just talk real quickly about what a plan is. And you can see more information about the site, objectrocket.com/pricing. But a plan is basically that shard size. So I talked a little bit about when you create an account, you have a single shard or a single database. That shard, you can add as many as you want. All we do is charge by storage. So when you're thinking about your projects, think about the sharding size or the sharding component that you want to put in these projects. Maybe it's a 5 gigger, maybe it's 100 gig, maybe it's 250. And hitting our support channel can help you. We can help you with those decisions if you're confused or if you're not sure what you need. Our support folks are great about helping to figure out what plans fit folks' needs the best. All right, so this is a 5 gigabyte medium plan. What that means is I'm going to get a 3-member replica set. So I'm going to get 3 databases, 1 of them primary and 2 of them secondary. The data that goes into the primary will automatically be replicated to the secondaries. That set is fully fault tolerant, so if one of those goes down, the other one will pick up. So that's a very nice availability component right off the bat. Like I said, this is a single shard. If I want to add more shards, I can simply click on a button and do that. We'll talk a little bit about that too. This is all SSD, so this is Fusion IO cards. If you're not familiar with Fusion IO, I recommend going and checking them out. They make a fantastic product. We use them in all our servers currently. It gives fantastic IO throughput, and we believe that we're bringing it to the market at a really competitive price. In this case, it'll be Mongo 246, and of course you get our fanatical 24/7 support. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Submit here. And I apologize, it's going to be a little bit latent over the link I got going on here. All right, so what I've got now is I've got an empty instance. The instance has no databases yet. It has nothing to connect to or interact with just yet. That's something I have to do first. So I'm going to go ahead and add a database. I'm just going to call this one KG. And I'll give myself, let's just make this simple, a username and a password. So we've got Mongo authentication enabled. All our databases have this by default. Basically, it's just employing MongoDB security on top of our system. All right, so now I have a database named KG. It's got 7 objects in it, and those are just the default objects. It's 61 bytes of space right now, so hardly anything of it is consumed, and that's just sort of like the overhead for provisioning it. In order to get access now, I need to add an ACL. You can see at the top it says you need to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and add an ACL. Now what is this doing? Let's allow anybody in here. So basically what this does is it goes out to our firewalls and allows these lists of IPs to be in your application or connect to from your application. So if, let's say you're out, you have apps on Amazon and you want to connect to our service, or you have apps on Rackspace and you want to connect to our service, you still need to go in here and you need to provision these ACLs. So that allows access into the database. So like I said, we're closed by default. This is the act of opening that access out to the world from an IP level. So I have a database on the Database tab, like I said, and I have an ACL now that allows access. So up in the upper right here, you can see my connect string. And this is the connect string that I talked about earlier. This is how you interact with our service. So I'm just going to copy that and just paste it in here. Nope, let me do one more thing here. Let's just use the KG database. Let's just do it in one step there. Okay. So as you can see, I'm in the Mongo shell now. This is just the default Mongo shell. I've connected to the ObjectRocket service. I've connected to the KG database here. I'm trying to highlight it for you here. With the username KG and the password. My password is KG. So this open all. You now know the password, and if you'd like to connect and play with this, please don't do it at the moment while I demo. But I'll leave this open after the webinar for a little bit, and you guys can kind of play with it a little bit if you want to put some data in there or mess around. So just don't put anything rude in there. Thank you. All right. So let's kind of look around here and see what we have. So so we've got the default collections, system indexes, and system users. Let's go ahead and just do some I/O. Let's just go ahead and interact with Mongo a little bit. Let's just go ahead and say let's do like a blog post or something. So I'm going to do a blog post, and I'm going to write a document here. Okay, so let's just call it title, and my title is "This is my first post." And let's just say the text, or let's call it the description, is blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I have now made a very basic document. That document has not been put into MongoDB yet. I've just defined it. And then I can simply say something like db.blogs.save blog post. Okay, and let's just go ahead and pull that back from the database, db.blogs.find. Okay, so it's a very, very simple way to interact with MongoDB. That is a super basic example, but that kind of gives you a flavor for how easy it is to interact with the service. Let me go back here and kind of show you what you get too. So let's go back to instances. And you can kind of see I'm tabbing between the web UI and the actual Mongo shell. Let's go to cluster details here, and this is just so, like I said, we provision a cluster for each instance that has got a single shard, but a 3-member set. So this page kind of shows you what that looks like. On the right here, I've got a primary and 2 secondaries. I've got a single shard, so it's just one shard. So let's say I want to go ahead and expand this cluster. Okay, I can just go ahead and add a shard at any time. And what that's going to do is add another 5 GB of data and expand my cluster by 2x. So what's happening when I click that is the ObjectRocket system goes out. It goes to our provisioning system, figures out what types of shards that we have from our various data centers, validates them, checks them in, and pops them into your system. So now you can see I have 2 members of my cluster, or 2 shards, a primary on each one of them and 2 secondaries. Okay? So that's a really, really simple and easy way to see kind of the setup and configuration of your cluster. Let's go back and talk at a high level real quick about the instance itself. All right, in this case, it was LUN1, or LON1. So it's a type MongoDB sharded, which means that, like I said, it's got multiple shards. It's the London data center. That's 246. It was created today. And this is how you can see kind of the overall high-level statistics about your instance and about the plan it's on and how much of it's used. So it's a 5 GB plan. We've got 2 shards. That gives us a total of 10 GB. We've only used 144 megabytes of it. giving us 9.1 gig available space. Okay? The connect string is here at the bottom. If you connect via SSL from your driver, here's the connect string you use, 33017. We also have API access via server. All right, so that's kind of what a high level looks like. You can rename it, you can delete it, all the typical CRUD operations that you would expect. Just a note about SSL and about drivers. So I showed the Mongo shell. I showed interacting in the most basic form, but most folks won't interact with that only. They will use whatever drivers their applications are written in. So if you're a Python person, you might use the Python driver to connect, and you'd simply just use the same connect string. If you're familiar with MongoDB, you'll know that typically they recommend that you put all the members of your replica set in your connect string. Or if you're sharded, they say add all the Mongo S servers into your shard string. In our case, you don't need to do any of that. We just have a single port and IP. The point behind that is that we want to keep it simple for our customers. All the complexities of load balancing and failure zones and multiple Mongo S servers and memory configurations, all that's basically hidden and handled on our side. So we just try and keep it simple and give folks a great available and performant solution. All right, so that's kind of the basics there.
Cool. Kenny, we've got a few questions that have come in. And just, I don't know if you can see them, just starting from the top. So Nikki's asked, can you explain the process by which a Rackspace cloud server will connect to an ObjectRocket instance? Is that basically just adding an ACL with the IP address of the server?
Yeah, correct. So great point. So there's a couple of things there. If you're using a cloud server, obviously we work with that seamlessly. And it goes over, we can set it up to go over the Rackspace connectivity or Rack Connect capabilities and ServiceNet capabilities. There's really nothing you do special other than just ensure that the ACL I talked about is open to those range of IPs. If it's just a single cloud server, you'll want to use the ServiceNet IP. If it's multiple, you'll want to use those multiple ServiceNet IPs. So nothing specifically tricky about it, and of course we're completely compatible with cloud servers. A lot of our customers use cloud servers. A lot of our customers will start off with a database on the cloud server, so they'll be running MongoDB themselves, and they will decide, hey, I'm going production and I need a little bit more horsepower. I need to scale this thing out. I'm seeing some traction. We provide a seamless avenue to onboard data from wherever you're at, whether it be on Amazon or your own data center or on Rackspace assets. We can go ahead and pull that data over for you and cut you over on our system with a very, very minimal amount of downtime. So,
cool. Thanks, Kenny. So next question from Reese. What would you say is the best learning resource for MongoDB newbies? So currently looking at 10gen. Is there anything else?
So yeah, that's a great question. I think that there's a couple good resources. The 10gen one, the really nice thing about the 10gen training is it's free. So that's the one that we recommend to date. I know that as Rackspace over the coming year, we are going to be providing a lot more help and a lot more community efforts around MongoDB. So stay tuned to Rackspace for some other options perhaps here in the future. But today I think the 10gen course is, obviously they know how Mongo works and they teach it very well. It's over the web, so it's easy to obtain and easy to attend, and it's low cost. It's free. So that's the best one at the moment.
Thanks. Just coming back on the question about ACL. So Nikki's basically just asked if you could actually maybe just explain a bit about what an ACL is.
Sure. So an ACL is an access control list. It is the way that you, in our system, you tell a router, which is the gatekeeper for all IP packets coming to our system, that it's okay to allow this server into the system. So at a very basic level, you're saying I have an app server that's running code on this cloud server, say, and I need it to be able to access ObjectRocket in order over the network. In order to do that, I'm going to have to open an access control list and specify that IP. So let me go back and just kind of show you what that looks like. because I might have gone through it kind of fast. Let's go here. I'm going to go back to my instance details on the control panel. And I'm going to go ahead and show the ACL. So let's kind of talk about the screen. It's very simple at its core. So right there we have the source IP, in this case, is the network 000/1 and 128.0.0.0.1. Basically what that means is anybody has access. Okay, so I've opened it wide open. But if you want to add another ACL, let's say you're 10. That's not a real IP address, but you get the point. You can allow any IP address in specifically, okay? And we have a little bit of text on our site about how that works and what that is. So I think the takeaway there is that you're going to need to allow access. If you're not sure of the IP address of your host, there's some tricks on how to do that in the documentation on our site. So you can visit docs.objectrocket.com, hit Getting Started Guide, and that'll give you a detailed tutorial of how to figure out your IP and how to plug it in.
Hey Kenny, so can you blacklist IPs? So if you are being DDoSed by an IP address or an IP range, can you be open except specific IPs?
Yeah, essentially, well, it's a good question. So essentially, everybody is blacklisted to start. You're only going to allow in certain IPs. Okay, so there's no access when you create an instance, and then you only allow in your application service. It's part of the security construct of how we set things up.
Okay, great. We had another question from Reese. How do you deal with upgrading Mongo in the background? So is there any end user impacts when you do a version upgrade?
Yeah, it's a great question. A couple things there. Number one is we don't force upgrades. So other services will say, hey, we're only compatible with 2. whatever, like say 2.4.6. We don't ever force a customer to move from whatever version they're on. So that's something to consider. If you want to upgrade, the best way to do it is just go ahead and hit our support. What we do is we upgrade the members of your replica set in the background, and then from the application standpoint, you'll see what's called an election. In Mongo terms, that's called a step down. And you'll move from a primary being on one node to the primary being on another node, and that other node has already been upgraded. So the upgrade experience is quite seamless from that standpoint. One more consideration there is that we typically recommend that folks do that in a staging or QA environment before they do it in their production environment. And so if they have multiple instances on ObjectRocket, we can do that to your staging instance, your dev instance, or whatever ahead of time, so you can make sure there's 100% compatibility before it happens before it's done on your production instance. Okay,
great. So I had a question about the shards and the size of the overhead. So saying basically the shards look quite big on the demo that you just showed. I think it was 144 meg. Is that normal? So what's the overhead size?
Yeah, so it's a good question. When you're initially provisioning an instance, things like the index collection and the users collection, the initial extents, they all need to be allocated. So that is the first sort of footprint on disk that's allocated by MongoDB by default. And typically that first allocation is larger than others. So it's a little bit misleading to think that that document that I wrote is 144 megabytes. That's not exactly true. So just to kind of give you a feeling for it. In terms of the shard size itself, we offer 5 gig, 20 gig, 50, 100, 250, so fairly large sizes above and beyond that. I showed the smallest sharded size. We also offer a bare bones 1 gigabyte replica set with no sharding, just for test and experimentation. So that's kind of what the sizes kind of look like when you break them down.
Okay, thanks. So a question from Chris. So we're already using MongoDB. Is there a system in place to migrate data, I'm assuming, to ObjectRocket, or is this something that they would have to do themselves?
Yeah, this is a good question. I talked about it just a little bit. I just touched on it. But basically, there's sort of 2 ways of doing it. Well, there's more than 2, but 2 ways that we can do it seamlessly. some customers have a small amount of data, maybe it's just development data or whatever. They can always migrate that themselves using, even MongoDump and MongoRestore. So that's one option. That option obviously is not online. It takes however long it takes to do that dump and restore. But if it's not a production instance, then that's easy. If it is a production class system and it's running, on some other service and you need to migrate to ObjectRocket, we have basically two techniques that we use. The technique that we primarily use today is what we'll do is add our system as one of your replica sets, and we'll handle the networking connectivity in the background for you. So that's seamless. Once we're one of your replica sets, you'll be essentially have one secondary on ObjectRocket, but your primary is still on your old system, and nothing's changed. When the time is right, and when we've coordinated the time is right for your application, we become primary. And at that point, you can see the power of ObjectRocket in terms of performance and availability and all those things. So that's the first time in which you sort of see how fast ObjectRocket is and get a feeling for what it would look like to have your application running on ObjectRocket. After that, there's one more step to finally cut you over and remove the old system and just be on ObjectRocket. And that is as simple as again, a replica set step down or an election. So it's very minimal interruption. Many applications, we recommend applications be tolerant of elections because that's part of the replica set architecture. So when that happens, if your application is indeed tolerant of elections, it's seamless to you. So that's kind of what the onboarding and migration process looks like.
So Kenny, is all that functionality available as standard through the control panel, or should Chris get in touch with your support folks?
Yes, good question. So just for a migration, just hit support@objectrocket.com at any time, and we'll get back to you and start to work through those things. Every migration is a little bit different. That's why it's not a perfectly automated thing. But our support folks have done a bunch of them now, and we have a process of doing it. We can bring you up to speed on what it looks like, and depending on what your environment looks like, we can talk about what things need to be done. Generally quite seamless.
Cool. Okay, another question from Reese. So do you provide access or change logs for end users so they can see who's been accessing their instance?
This is a good question. Today we do not. What we provide today is the default Mongo security. There is one caveat to that, and that is if you turn on the profiler, which is a MongoDB component that's built into Mongo, we have tools on our website that allow you to turn it on and off. But you can do it within Mongo itself. We don't affect that in any strange way. If you do that, you can see all the login attempts and what the username is, and how many times it was tried and all that stuff. So there is let me call it a basic audit log. It does not tell you this user logged in and all the things that user. It's not a security audit. You can see all the statements, the queries and updates, inserts that were run, and what user ran in the profiler as well. So, I'd like to classify basic logging, but MongoDB itself and ObjectRocket doesn't do anything to make this anything different than the stock functionality. Is not a security audit, but more of a basic audit.
Cool, thanks. So last question for now. We've got someone looking for a freebie. So can we get a free demo account? Is it a free 1 gig account available?
Yeah, so the demo accounts are, I think it's the 5 gig accounts. Those are available for a 30-day trial. Let me just check the website here because I forget. Yeah, so the 5 gig account, which is the one that I showed, is a 30-day free. Just go ahead and sign up. It's going to ask you for your credit card. But the first 30 days are on us. So give it a shot and tell us, give us feedback.
There we go. Can't say fairer than that. And so we've got no other questions come through at the moment. Folks, you've got a couple of minutes left. So if there are any last questions, please get them in now. Alternatively, you can see Kenny's contact details on the screen. So I'm guessing, Kenny, by virtue of the fact that you've displayed those, you're happy to accept questions from any folks afterwards?
Yeah, sure, you bet. I think a couple of things about questions. these webinars, you never really know, where folks are at. So I just like to offer that if you're new to MongoDB and you have questions about MongoDB and how it works, and how the document model works, and maybe even how it's applicable to your projects, go ahead and ping us at support@objectrocket.com. You can also email me directly at kgorman@objectrocket.com. I get a lot of emails, so the best thing is support. We tend to reply to those very quickly because obviously that's our support channel, and we'll help you out. We're in the community. We love MongoDB. If you have challenges with Mongo, we'd love to help, even if it's not on our system, frankly.
Cool. And by the looks of it, if there's anyone listening that's got MongoDB expertise, you might have a job for them.
Yeah. So we're hiring. If folks are interested in, and we have all types of roles from folks who are already really good at Mongo and are looking to really become more of a ninja. We have those kind of roles. If folks are just beginning with Mongo or interested in Mongo, we even have those kinds of positions. So hit our career page if you're interested in doing this for a living or doing it full time.
Cool. Okay. So actually, we've had another question come in, just thinking about, kind of use case and what kind of businesses and applications are a good fit for MongoDB and ObjectRocket. I think you maybe touched on that before, but are there any, when you look at your customer base, are there any sort of specific trends or any specific sectors where ObjectRocket works really well?
Yeah, so this is a good point. ObjectRocket and specifically MongoDB work great for a variety of applications, but gaming seems to be one that's gaining traction. And I think the interesting thing, and maybe perhaps part of the reason why is I guess twofold. Number one is the document model is different than the relational model. And just to kind of call that out a little bit, in a relational database you have a table with fixed columns. And if you need to add a column, that's a change to the structure of the database. In MongoDB, it's very fluid. So things like, and it allows a nested structure, not a relational structure. So if folks need to embed top scores into a user's account, that can be a simple one database operation activity versus a relational database you might have to update multiple tables. So it's streamlined from that standpoint. But not only that, from a scalability standpoint, we have a couple of gaming companies that use us, and one of the things they really liked was, and I didn't touch on this too much, is that our system can be set up so that if you are filling up your shards and you need another one, our system, we have an agent called Rocket Scale which will automatically do that. And so gaming companies like this because if their games may be unpredictable in their adoption. They may have a whole bunch of users overnight, and what if those guys are sleeping? It's the middle of the night, and how do they staff that? How do they make sure their database scales and is elastic? So our Rocket Scale agent takes care of that. And basically, when they start to fill up or get traction, when they get featured on the App Store or something like this, our system will automatically add a shard as they start to grow. And so it's very seamless from a scalability standpoint. So it's another really interesting thing or alluring thing to our customers. And that's really only on ObjectRocket. That's not something MongoDB does. That's an area where we've leveraged the cloud. So you can imagine we have a bunch of compute at Rackspace, and it's very easy for us to go out and add another piece of compute when the customer needs it by tapping into the Rackspace resources. So that's the power of the cloud essentially with MongoDB kind of dovetailed into it.
Okay, so along a similar theme, so another question from Nikki, just asking about best practices for building in resilience between the app layer and the DB. So she's saying, if a connection is reliant on a single server based on an IP address, how do you cope with that particular server failing?
Right, it's a great question. So if in our system, if you use that single server name, which is a virtual IP, just to be clear, and a port, if any one of those servers fails, you see only one thing happen on your connection, and that is an election. You do not need a new connection. You do not need to change your application and re-roll it. You don't need to disconnect and reconnect. It's simply the act of a MongoDB election. The way that we handle that in the background is we actually, when you hit that virtual IP, that's actually a load balancer IP. And that load balancer IP hits a Mongo S suite of servers. So we have many, many Mongo S servers, which is the Mongo data router component, if you will. And then we have all your replica sets and your shards behind that. So we're fault tolerant across the board. We're fault tolerant intra data center. We're fault tolerant across multiple cabinets, multiple power supplies. So if any one of those things failed, the net effect to the customer is simply an election. That's it.
Okay, so last couple of questions, then we're going to have to bring it to a close. So can customers scale down easily as well as scale up?
Yes. So we don't automatically scale down like we would automatically scale up. So we're optimized for a growth scenario there. But yeah, we're essentially elastic. If you need to delete a shard at any time, there's a process for evacuating that shard and scaling it back down. That is something that we're doing that in a more elastic manner, doing that in a more on-demand model is something that we're looking at doing in 2014. But today, it's simply just hit support and say, I've got 20 shards now. I'd like whatever 19 or 17 or whatever it is. Maybe it's seasonality or whatever, and we take care of that for you. So it's seamless to you. You don't need to worry about it. The customers that use that kind of elasticity today are, like I said, seasonal type folks, or sometimes when people do promotions, like there was Super Bowl stuff that came up, people wanted to grow by 50% just to make sure they had enough capacity, and after the Super Bowl was over, they maybe they only filled up by 30% or something, and they wanted to kind of trim back a little bit. So those scenarios are entirely possible on our service. Expanding the sharding or expanding the number of shards is automatic. Reducing them is a support ticket.
Okay. So final question. Can you give us a sense of scale in terms of your biggest customers, your biggest users at ObjectRocket? How much traffic? How big are their databases?
Yeah, that's a good question. So customers, we obviously have a range of customers from very small to very big. Our larger customers are multi-terabyte type customer, 10 terabyte type customers. Some of our customers are doing up to 120 or 130,000 Mongo queries per second. And if you want to translate that into disk I/O, that's about 2 gigabytes of disk I/O per second. So that kind of gives you a feeling for kind of the scale. If we tend to cater, frankly, towards the bigger clients, the bigger customers that need the scalability, that need the sharding, that need that kind of high-end expertise with our support and sort of the platform itself. If you're starting out, we'd love you to be on our service. But there's a variety of services, even free services, that when you're just like playing around with Mongo, that you can go and check out. And then when the time comes, you can move to our service. So either one of the scenarios we support and love. Of course, we'd love people to start out in our service. But wherever you tend to run your Mongo, when you need that expertise and when you need that scale, that's when folks tend to come talk to us.
Great, thanks, Kenny. I think that about wraps things up for now. So, folks, if you've found this useful and interesting, then just want to highlight a few other sessions and events we've got coming up from Rackspace Academy over the next few weeks. So we're continuing to get out and about around the country with our ever-popular Cloud Hands-On Training Day. As you can see from the screen, the next few sessions are full. We've just announced a new date in London, though, which is 28th of April. It's booking up quickly, but there are still a few spaces. So if you're interested, it's a free kind of full-day introductory cloud session, so we'll get your hands on and building three-tier cloud architectures in no time. Our next Google Hangout is on the 10th of Feb. We're looking at running Hadoop on the Rackspace Cloud. We're also covering that same topic in a webinar, which is middle of March. We haven't confirmed the date yet, but that's going to be sometime during the week, commencing 17th of March. So same topic. So just choose your preferred medium, whether you prefer webinars or Google Hangout there. And then finally, we'll be at Cloud Expo. So if you're heading down to the London Excel Centre on the 26th and 27th of Feb, pop by the Rackspace stand. We'll be running a series of short lightning talks and demos, so come along and see us and say hello. It'd be great to see you there. All of these events are on rackspace.co.uk/academy, or you can find us on Google Plus or LinkedIn. So check them out, and we hope you'll find something else of interest. I think that's about it for now. Kenny, thanks very much. It's been great having you on the call.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Cool. And as before, if you've got any questions, anything you want to follow up on, drop a mail to support@objectrocket.com. Or if it's a more general question about Rackspace Academy, then it's academy@rackspace.co.uk. Thanks very much for joining today. Hope you found it useful and interesting, and we will see you again very soon. Bye for now.
Thank you. Please stand by.